Warning: tube amplifiers have lethal voltages inside them. Please do not attempt to build, test, or repair these without understanding and following all safety protocols. Hey y'all! Well, we're going to do some videos on populating this Tubes for Hi-Fi board. And we haven't done one of these kind of videos in a while. And I know some of you guys really like watching these just kind of slow, watching me solder and put something together. And for some of you folks, this is going to be super boring and it's probably not going to be your cup of tea. I get that. This next two videos probably aren't going to get a lot of views. And I'm kind of warning people now so they don't get PO'd. It's like, man, this is boring. It's like, yeah, it's going to be kind of a boring video. I throw a few little tips in. I make a couple little mistakes and I show you how to fix them, or what kind of stuff you don't need to worry about or don't panic over and that kind of thing. So maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you'll just find this relaxing. But yeah, let's get busy. So I'm going to assemble this board in a little different order than the instructions have. I like putting all the resistors on first, because if you put the tube sockets in, you've got this plastic here that you could potentially put the soldering iron up against, or you're trying to solder something in. And I just feel like that these are probably the most heat tolerant devices on the board. And there's also more of them. And so once you get all of these guys soldered in place, you're well on your way to having the board finished. And so I've put all of these blue resistors, went through, and I just measure them with an ohm meter. I know some people read color codes. Some of you guys are just know them like the back of your hand, and you can do them real quick. I just measure them, put them in their spots, and then bend the leads over. And I try to, this is my OCD. I try to put the little gold stripes all in the same direction, and like that one and that one, and get some symmetry to it. There's some other resistors that are like this color, and I'm going to put these in the bottom just so I don't have a mix of colors. I know that's silly, but hey, I want this to look nice too. It's one of the reasons I got these black tube sockets and then ground them smooth and then kind of polish the sides so they'd have a nice clean look and have some black sockets to match the black board, instead of using the little ceramic white ones. I like this black board too. I know the OG amplifier had a green board, and yeah, maybe for vintage reasons I should be using the green board, but I just think this black one's going to look nicer with the black transformers and the silver kind of chrome chassis or whatever. So the other thing that I do too is, and I don't know if you can really see it here well, but I space the resistors up off the chassis just a little bit so that the little air can get underneath them. And, I know these little half-watt ones probably aren't going to get very hot, but I still think it's a good idea to not have them just right up against the board. And, it's maybe business card thickness of gap between the resistor and the board. So, anyway, we're going to kind of give this a little deal like that, and then look underneath and make sure that all the resistors are hanging down like I want them to be before I solder them into place. And yeah, that all looks good. So we're going to come in here and solder some resistors. And I know some of you guys really enjoy watching me just solder, so that may be a lot of what this video is just a little ASMR soldering some resistors. And you definitely want to have a pair of these flush cut nippers so you can cut the leads off really close to the chassis. And we're going to do all the stuff that's going on the top as far as the resistors. Then we'll put these resistors that are going to be mounted on the bottom side in, and then we'll also do some of these resistors here that are underneath the opening of the board where you really can't put the resistors on the top. And then finally we'll put in the tube sockets, the pots. I think I'm going to put all the caps on the bottom and not have them exposed up on top to the tube heat. And yeah, we'll be all done with getting the board populated. So I'm using some MG Chemicals RA Flux 032 solder to do this circuit board work. And I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit here. And we'll start down here on this end of the board. And get some heat in it. And then push the solder in. You want to make sure that you're heating up the lead and the tab on the board. And I'd rather put a little too much solder than not enough. And to me, the trick is having a clean tip and then using the right kind of solder. And then once I do a few joints, we'll come in and cut some of these off. Get them out of our way. And then do this little guy here that's trying to wiggle around a little bit. I don't know about that one. That one's gonna, and actually I'm gonna cut some of these off, little excess leads off of these ones that are packed in here together. Give them a little haircut. And give me a little more room to work. Well, see, there's something you don't want to do. Is right there we've bridged between those two pins, and if that happens you can get a clean tip and drag the soldering iron between them, and usually you can clean that up. But yeah, those two are still bridged. So the other thing to have handy, in case you have that happen, and just like that. I actually think those two are connected together. Anyway, yeah, they are. So even if you bridge those two, it doesn't matter because there's a trace connecting between the two of them. So no harm, no foul there. Probably put a little bit too much solder in that joint. That's why that happened. I would rather have a little too much than not enough. I feel like once you get all the resistors on, you put a really big dent in the project. It's almost any circuit, there's more resistors than anything else. Almost halfway done soldering all our resistors in place. And so I'm going to go down here and work on the other end towards the middle. Although it doesn't really matter. Got these done. Let's go ahead and get this little guy down here. Again, I looked at these two paths right here. These two are on the same pad. If you look, there's a trace between the two of them. So if you bridge those two, they're real close together. That's not an issue because they are tied together with the circuit board. So we'll do this little row down here. Like I said, sometimes it helps to come in and give them a little haircut, like those two right there where they were kind of overlapping. Makes it a little easier to solder those. And all we got are these 4 right here. And then I'm going to go back and look at the schematic and make sure that bridging this little joint there wasn't an issue. But it looks like to me with a magnifier there's a trace between those 2 pads. So if you do happen to bridge that like I did, it's not an issue. I can't imagine they'd intentionally put 2 pads that close together that weren't connected, especially knowing that amateurs are going to be assembling these boards. And while I've done some circuit board work, I'm not a super pro at doing PC board work, but I guess I've built quite a few of those phono stages, so they're actually a little more, I guess what I would call coarser, heavy-duty kind of circuit boards. These do have a little bit smaller traces than those EAR clone boards do, but here we go. Definitely got well soldered components. They are nice, spaced up off the board a little bit there, so a little air can ventilate underneath them. And so the next thing we're going to do is put the parts on the underside of the board, and that's going to be the capacitors. It's going to be those brown resistors. There's some resistors down here on the end. It shows you the outline here of the opening in the chassis. And so I'm going to put these resistors and this one, like these 3, on the underside of the board so that you don't have to worry about them hitting the chassis. And then we'll put the bias pots in, and then we'll be ready to do the tube sockets. We got a little bit of stuff over here too. All of this stuff up here is going to be on the underside of the board. And then we'll be finished assembling this thing. Well, like I said in the intro, these kind of videos aren't for everybody. This is kind of a slower pace, just showing you soldering every part and kind of how I assemble boards like this. And so if you've never done this kind of thing before, maybe this will give you the confidence to take on a project like this and not just buy a pre-populated board. And like I said in this video, the cool thing about doing it yourself is you get to decide where the parts go. Whether you want to put them on the top, whether you want to put them underneath, you know, what kind of tube sockets you want to use, and all that kind of stuff. You get to pick that. You know, if you try to write them and say, well, I want you to build it like, they don't do it like that. If you buy a pre-built board, I'm pretty sure they've got a certain way they build them that they ship out pre-assembled. So if you want something custom, you're going to have to do it yourself. And like I said, if you've never done this before, maybe watching a video like this would give you some confidence that, hey, this isn't too hard. That looks easy enough. I could probably do that myself. And you'll give it a try. Stuff like this too does really help your soldering skills. So if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Thanks to all you Patreon supporters and other folks that help support the channel. Again, I want to say this video is not sponsored by Tubes for Hi-Fi. I'm going to say that in every one of these. I just went to their site and bought their boards. And he recognized me and emailed me back, but it was still, I'm just a customer. So they're not paying me, they're not giving me a board, they're not, you know, there's good value in this, and I wanted to support their business too. So, you know, we may be doing things a little differently than their instructions show. Like, I was soldering the stuff in a different order than they said. That's the other DIY thing. You get to decide how you're going to do it. So anyway, till the next video, have a nice day.